Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemet. And joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, and Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed, New York City. I think we're recording this on day 775 with three bodies of hostages still in captivity, not returned. We pray for their swift return as this war moves into different phases. We are talking about Parasha Toldot this week. Parasha Toldot, which is, what are we, number 6. It's the sixth Parsha in the book of Breshit. We had the transition last week between the generation of Avraham and the generation of Yitzchak. And I want to start out, the Parsha gets its name from the first verse, obviously. Ve'ela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham olidet Yitzchak. This is the Toldot, generations, or the story of Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham holidet Yitzchak. Abraham was the one who brought Isaac into being. But I want to put this in the context of the what has led up to this. What has led up to this are two genealogies. One, the genealogy of Abraham, Abraham's uh, how are we going to say this nicely? His secret life, I guess.
His love children.
His love child. Abraham has a second wife, Keturah. Keturah, the rabbis, some of them identify her as Hagar, and he has a whole litter of children and grandchildren from that. I think it numbers about 12, 13, 14, whatever. We can go through and as there's a whole genealogy from Abraham and Keturah. Second, it back in at the end of Chayei Sarah, we have the genealogy of Ishmael. It says, verse 25, verse 12, Ve'ele toldot Yishmael ben Avraham, asher yalda Hagar mitzrit shivchat Sarah Avraham. These are the generations of Ishmael, son of Avraham, who Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant of Sarah, had for Avraham. And they go on and tells us about 12 children. And then it's Ve'ele toldot Yitzchak, no children. Okay, so I, in the interpretation that I want to spin here, it's everybody's aware of everything. Yitzchak is aware that Ishmael, his brother, has a whole clan. Yitzchak is aware that Abraham, his father, has a whole separate life. Yitzchak is aware that Rivka, who he marries, comes from the family of Nahor, and we read about Nahor at the end of the Akeva, all those people that were born. That's a lot. That's a big family. So in the context of big families, and you go all the way back, to the genealogy in chapter 11 of Breshit. It's these are the generations, and it goes each one. And it goes Vayola banim uvanot, Vayola banim uvanot, Vayola banim uvanot. They had sons and girls, daughters. So in that context, you have Isaac. Isaac is 40 years old, and it's not happening. And we know that he loves Rebecca, and we know that God has promised him already. He's gotten the promise from his father, and they can't produce a child. And so I'm trying to at least open up the predicament that Isaac finds himself in, and that Rivka finds herself in, that these are two childless parents who are discovering us. We learn it's 20 years into the marriage that they're childless. And we derive 20 years because when they finally have children, Isaac is 60 years old. He marries Rebecca at 40. So from age 40 to age 60, there's no children, and there's the sense there's not the sense, there's the experience of infertility. And that's astounding. And that,
So, it's interesting, Elliot, if I might interject,
yeah,
that
go
this
ahead.
is a marked contrast with Rachel next week, because Rivka is not upset in the way that Rachel is upset. Rachel will say this: if she can't have a child, she'd rather be dead, or something to that effect. And we don't get that sense with Rivka. Both Rivka and Yitzchak engage in prayer, and their prayer is answered.
Well, take the pasuk, okay? So it says, Vayetar Yitzchak ladonai lenochach ishto. So we translate that as Isaac entreats God on behalf of his wife. Ki akara he, for she is barren. Vayeater lo Adonai vatarivka ishto. And so nice play on words. Vayeater. How would you translate vayeater? Jeremy, give me a
Well,
translation.
he was entreated. Isaac pled and God was pleaded.
God was
The,
platted.
the Midrash associates this word with pitchfork. Like Isaac took the pitchfork and turned God over because when a tzaddik prays, God just always responds. But we know that that's of course not true. And if he was 20 years of infertility, there must have been a lot of unanswered prayers. But in any event, by verse 21, chapter 25, verse 21, finally there is an answered prayer. And Rivka does say something to Barry's observation. It is a marked contrast with Rachel of next week because Rachel, why is she in such a bad strait? Because there are four women in that particular, concatenation. There's her sister, who's just popping them out, and she's tremendously jealous. Even the two maidservants, they can successfully, and poor Rachel, though she is loved, same story as Hannah. Husband says to her, I love you so much. It's our relationship, but for a biblical woman, that's just not going to be good enough. I need a child. And she says, if I don't have a child, I'd rather die. Now, Rebecca, she also says a kind of a death wish, but it's not that. She's having a very difficult pregnancy, and the two children, in this profound mythic kind of way, the rabbis say it that when they would pass a study house, Jacob would press and try to come out from the study house, and when they would press a zone of idol worship, Esau would pray and try to get out of her womb to get to the idol worship. But she's in this tremendously difficult, painful pregnancy with the twins warring within her.
Yeah.
And she says, Imkin lama ze anochi. Wait, this is what life is about? This is terrible.
All right, so let's go with that because that's in the following verse, and let's read it carefully. Vayitro tetzua banim bikirba, and the translation that I like to use, the Everett Fox translation, based on the understanding of what vayitro tetzu is. They crushed themselves. They were rubbing up against each other. They were crushing each other inside bikirba. But Tomer, she says, Im kain, if so, lama ze anochi, and that's where we get some interpret. The lama ze anochi literally would be, why this me, why me, or why am I, and then it says vatelech lidrosh et Adonai, and she goes to seek God. So let's start with lama ze anochi. I was reading some commentaries earlier about this, and it's not. We like to superimpose that this is a painful pregnancy, and we're getting at comments. Three men here who only know of pregnancy that is through
Secondhand.
other
From the outside.
from the outside. Okay, so yes, it's a legitimate critique to make about on us. Okay, but it may not necessarily be that she had a difficult pregnancy. It may be that she is saying, how am I the one that has been selected to carry these twins?
Yeah,
Who
but
am
even
I?
so, if it's not difficult, then why is she complaining?
She's
Right? The
carrying
Vaya
twins.
Rosasu has to suggest, I think, some degree of difficulty because she needs some kind of resolution. She's not going to the oracle to find out why she's barren. She's going to the oracle because her pregnancy is not going the way she thought it would go. And I think maybe the answer is going to be that she didn't know she was having twins.
Vayitro tetzua banim bikirba. So again, this goes to what ancient medicine would be, what ancient, how would people know? I mean, there are stories today of women, pregnant women who don't know that they are. How could they not know I mean, you go to ultrasounds after, 6 weeks already, and you know that there's at least one in there. Um, and how they couldn't know. I mean, you could not know that you have a second
Right,
child.
but it happens. So, it doesn't matter what we think. We know it does happen.
But Elliot, I'm not sure this is where you were going, but because the Bible stories are, uh, Genesis's stories are almost inevitably about these kind of binary struggles of chosen and unchosen, the good kid and the bad kid. In a way that if we read them as actual stories about actual human beings and not mythical figures, it might make us really uncomfortable. But it's fine because Cain Vehevel and Yitzhak and Yishmael and Yaakov and Esav, they're not just individuals who happen to be alive. They're representative figures for nations, for covenants, and I think that the one way one might read this. I mean, I do think the pshat is that she's having a painful experience of
Well,
pregnancy.
I'm just
But I don't know if
trying
you're
to
going
pull
with.
up the Ramban here,
I don't know
and,
if you're going on this, but you might say, why am I, what is the meaning of my life that I am bearing both? Because Sarah didn't bear both Yitzhak and Ishmael; she only bore Yitzhak, and
Right,
Rebecca is bearing perhaps both Esav and Yaakov, and all that they represent. The voice of Yaakov, meaning midrashically speaking, all that is Jewish, all that is Jewish masculinity, all that is study and prayer and intellect and sensitivity. And she's also bearing, again in Jewish parlance, all that is Esav, all that is impetuous and violent and physically powerful. So Lama Ze Anochi could resonate to the reader with who actually am I?
all
And
right. So
So
I'm going to put
well, I
up.
think we need to interject one thing here, and that is that Vaye Rotsasu Havanim Bekirba is the third person narrative. It's not Rivka. It's not her consciousness. It's a description of her plight. Her words are Lama Anochi.
I wanted to put up the Ramban here because the Ramban, has this talks about this very issue. So he says if it's the pain of pregnancy, right? It's so great. This he's quoting Rashi. Why did I pray for and aspire to pregnancy? That's Rashi, but it is not correct. Ramban always, objecting to Rashi. Ibn Ezra says that she asked the women if they had experienced such pains, and they said no. Whereupon she said, if the matter and custom of the pregnancy be as they said, Lama Zenochi, why am I beset with unusual pregnancy? This exposition, the verse is missing and not complete. The correct interpretation, in my opinion, is that she said, if it shall be so with me, Lama Zenochi, why am I in the world? Would that I did not exist, that I should die or never have come into existence. This is similar to the verse, I should have been as though I had not been. In other words, she's saying she's really asking a question about her own existence here, and not necessarily about a painful pregnancy. She's really asking, why she's there. I would go a step further
But
here.
what's the motivation for her
Well, here's the
question?
motivation. The motivation is my father and brother, when they sent me off from Aram Naharaim to Canaan, they gave me this blessing, Atayil al Febrava. And okay, they're blessing me that I should be thousands of myriads. Okay. And now I'm in this family. Isaac has brought me into his mother's tent, meaning he has brought me into the role of matriarch, okay? And I am supposed to be this role. And now I have this pregnancy after 20 years of childlessness. I haven't produced a single child. And now I'm having, evidently she's aware that there are twins there. We can't go into how she would know that. Uh, at least the narrator knows that there's twins.
Right. I
Um,
think it, okay.
and then she says, Lama Zanochi, why am I here? Why was I chosen for this role? That's what I think she's saying. But Teleli Droshet Adonai, she's not going to God to alleviate her pain or the difficulty. She's going to get an explanation for what her role is. Do you have any objections to that interpretation?
Other than that, I don't like it. It's great.
Well, technically,
What
Drosha
But
the,
Dama.
Elliot, it seems like you're trying to get to a point, right? And
my
you're still in
point
the
is,
middle.
yeah,
So
my
what's the conclusion here?
here's my point. My point is that all of Abraham and Sarah, they were told they would have a whole nation, and they don't. They, the two of them are supposed to produce a nation. They produce at the very best one child together that they nearly kill, that he nearly kills. Okay. So Abraham understands that the nation is not going to come from me. So therefore, he puts Isaac in the role. Isaac is told, you're going to be the head, father of a nation. You're going to be Lazaracha. There's going to be seed. So he's thinking like anybody would think, okay, I'm supposed to have a lot of children. And here I can't even have a single child. And now, after 20 years of marriage, she's walking around thinking, what the hell am I doing here?
So
Why am I here?
I wonder if this is in part a prefiguring of the position of the nation Israel in the Middle East, that it's always going to be one of the smaller countries, no matter how many descendants actually emerge. And that's rooted in the formation of the first family, right? They have one child, Abraham, that counts for the people, and Isaac will have one child that counts because they're always going to be, what does Jacob say? Katonti, I am the smallest of the small,
Yeah, but
because that's
I'm thinking in a totally different way, which is, you know, we have sometimes encountered families with lots and lots of children, okay? Not typically in our communities, but if you just step a little bit to the right of orthodoxy, the right of conservative Judaism, in the communities adjacent to us, you have families of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 children, okay? And you see these photographs of the intergenerational family where you can have upwards of 70, 80 people in a photograph of grandchildren, great grandchildren. Okay. And so
so.
you think of
Yeah.
those things as they're clans, of course, but they're microscopic nations. They're incubated nations, basically. And here, this is what Isaac wants. He wants to
Right,
be,
but then you need to make sense then if Rivka is breaking the paradigm because he's having a twofer,
yeah.
then why is it a problem for her? She should be ecstatic that she's going to double the size of the generation.
So she's probably aware that she has not had children. Now she's having children, and she's asking, like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this
So maybe what she's upset about is the Vayet Rotsasu, that the two, she already knows that these two children are not going to get
are
along.
crushing each other inside her? Okay.
And maybe what she's asking for is, why can't we have two people that belong rather than have to choose?
Well, okay. So when she gets the oracle from the oracle, Latelach Lidrosha Hashem, which is wherever she went to get this,
So the
and where do you?
yeshiva of Shem and Aver.
That's
No,
what Rashi says, and I mean it's an enigma for us who want the pashut pshat.
well, it's not, because I think Shem is one of them is still alive in the time of Abraham.
Okay,
You do
so
the genealogies.
well, stepping outside of midrash and offer your own interpretation here. What would that? I mean, I think it's extraordinary. She is the first person that is recorded to who is seeking vatelech lidrosh et Adonai. She's seeking something. She's seeking, God. That
So, unlike Abraham, who gives birth to a multitude of nations, two of his wives, Hagar and Sarah, only give birth to one nation. But Rivka is going to give birth to two nations
she's going to give birth to two nations,
who are
and
going to be in a contest or a combat forever.
so again, I'm trying to understand what she is thinking, okay? Which is after getting that piece of information, there's two nations in your womb, then and does she know that Isaac is Isaac. So I'm arguing that she knows that there's Isaac is supposed to be, uh, a head of a nation because she knows that Abraham was supposed to be the head of a nation, and um,
So, all right, I think if we go to the following verse or two verses to 24,
yeah,
right after the oracle, V'rav Yavot Seir, Vayimlo'u Yamim Laledet, V'hine Tomim Bevidna. And it seems to me that the simplest explanation is now she knows she's having twins, that she
okay.
didn't know before. And that was what the difficulty was. That it actually, that the oracle was predictive. It wasn't telling her something she already knew, meaning that the realization of the twins only comes at birth, not with the oracle.
Okay. And then, but again, I'm the
Grasping
question
at straws.
the
Go ahead.
question that's driving my thinking right now about the Parsha is, what does it mean to be told something way before it comes into reality, and how does it shape your life? What does it mean to have an oracle in your life? What does it mean? I mean, I would make the parallel saying, I look at a child, and you see the child, and the child is so, creative, and you say, ah, you're going to grow up to be. I remember
So,
there was a child in the community who was so gifted musically, and parents looked at him and said, ah, this child is going to be, such a musician. In the end, he did not become a musician, um, and something happened. But you can look at, and so she is being told, first, you're going to be a mother of myriad of thousands, and second, she's told you have two nations in your womb. And so, what does that do to a person?
well, this is what it does to her because one of the questions that the Parsha raises that's not answered in the text, we know why Isaac loves Esau because he has a taste of meat in his mouth. But why does Rivka love Yaakov? And it seems that maybe Rivka loves Yaakov because she internalized the oracle.
Do you think she shared the oracle with Isaac?
I don't think she could have.
No?
It makes no sense. It makes no sense if she did. But the thing is that
That's why
as,
Elliot.
as the famous, interpretive uh, controversy around this goes, uh, the oracle is not unambiguous. The oracle is ambiguous.
Yes.
Varavya avod sa'ir might legitimately mean the older shall serve the younger, or the older shall the younger serve. Avanim yishachakumayim, stones wear away the water, is a pasuk in Job, which of course doesn't mean the stones wear away the water. It's stones the water doth wear away. And so
Well,
here,
but with the trope, it seems that you have to have the older serve the younger.
No, you
Right?
don't need. You can. I agree with Jeremy. You can have an ambiguous reading here. We don't need to be wedded to the trope here. The Torah is doing this all the time.
so with the question about um, what do you do with an oracle, is that oracles at best are like raw material, right?
So, yeah, go on.
They're like raw material. They're not uh, destiny, because to take the example that you gave, oh, this kid is destined for musical greatness. Yeah, well, you know what? So as long as you put in a whole lot of hard work and you have some good luck, and you pick the right co-musicians in your band, then you are destined for musical greatness. And if you sit around playing video games, you're not destined for anything. So I feel like, what do you do with an oracle? An oracle tells you what the possibilities might be at hand and demands of you. There's nothing in the Bible, for all the stories about the divine power in the Tanakh. Okay, I shouldn't say there's nothing because I don't actually know the
There's
Navi all
little.
that well, but it is the typical way of the Bible not to say, God has said this is going to happen, so sit still and do nothing. It's, God has said this is going to happen. Now you have to be God's partner. So, like, what does Moses? Okay, yes, Moses does tell the people to shut up and watch God's salvation at the Red Sea. But God says, what are you yelling at me for? Pick up your staff, split the sea, and start walking. So the destiny, the promise, still requires human ingenuity and commitment. And so when Rebecca, who as we talked about, in previous years and previous weeks, is such a powerful figure. She
Yeah.
is so strong. She is so uh, she is the real covenantal partner here. So she's looking and she sees it's like succession. Uh, uh, Roman is going to be elevated to head the company, but Kendall is really the right one. And so maybe that's not true. I don't even remember,
Roman
but
is Edom. We know that.
but I still want Rebecca to say, "Oh my God, my idiot husband is going to appoint Esav to be the head of the family. I got to
I,
step in."
yeah,
So how do you fit in? How do you fit in the actual bracha that Yitzchak gives to his two sons with the oracle?
right. So what I believe on this go around is that he wasn't aware of the oracle, and that
Yeah.
the urgency that Rebecca acts with is because she has a certain understanding of how things are going to are destined to turn out, and Isaac is going to ruin that. I was just going to say, these oracles and blessings have a certain power within, like the Hasidic world. There's so many stories of the Lubavitcher. The Lubavitch pulled us aside and said, "You should invest. You invest in this," or there are lots of stories on YouTube about the things that the Rebbe said and that came true for people because they internalized it, and so these things that are said by a powerful, charismatic figure lodge deeply in the life of the person who hears them. The same way, for example, if you walk in certain streets in Manhattan, you'll see astrologer. From time to time, I walk in on a certain street and I
Tarot
see,
cards, yeah.
astrology reading. And, it's for an appointment call. And my joke is, if you're a psychic, you should know already. That, why do you have
But
to
I'm gonna call.
advertise, right? The point is that, and I've told this story many times, is where I remember a woman in my congregation who said, like in a confession, said to me, I went to see an astrologer, or a bunch of us, we had an evening together, and we had a psychic, and the psychic told me certain things, and I'm very, very apprehensive about what the psychic told me because I'm very worried about, this eventuality. And you never know. You can't underestimate the power of a charismatic figure saying to someone, "This is going to happen to you." It may be very irresponsible that you will, for that person to say that, but it lodges somewhere deeply in the person's consciousness, and of course, charlatans take advantage of. So here, the what is said to her by whoever said it, you're going to have two nations. So she's got to be thinking about this her whole
So
life.
do you think she did the right thing then with Yaakov in the birthright story, the
So
blessing
what?
story?
Yes, in the end, I do think she did the right thing, but she did it the wrong way.
Of course, from the perspective of the Torah, of course she did the right thing because we are the covenantal people. We are Bnei Yaakov. We are Bnei Yisrael. Of course, that's true,
But
and it's
don't
tragic.
don't
This,
you want to press pause on the play and say, "Tell him, just tell him, tell Isaac."
oh, absolutely. It's tragic because Aesop is such a powerful character. He's a little bit comic, but our hearts, have you not saved Hello Atzalta Libracha? Didn't you save me a blessing?
Okay,
Habracha Ahati Lacha? Have you only one blessing in your house, Abba? Oh my God.
so the
It's just
heart, it breaks your heart. It's such
and
a
so it's and so yes, Jacob has to be the covenantal leader. No, Aesop cannot be. But the Torah tells you the story. I'll say it
Okay,
like this.
but the
The Torah tells
question
you the
is,
Torah tells you the story. Every person who ever heard the story knows that we're on Jacob's side. And yet, the Torah, in its enormous literary and emotional depth, gives us a story that makes us weep for our rival.
yeah, because he's not the rival there. he is the cheated victim. He's the victim there, and we feel for him as we would feel for anyone who has been cheated, and
Well,
therefore,
but we don't feel so much that we're willing to give him what is rightfully his.
okay.
I'm really, it's a little it's a little hard, the stories of Ishmael and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav, who just like in chapter 25, Ishmael and Yitzchak will bury Abraham. In chapter 35, Esav and Jacob will bury Isaac. I think it's a bad idea to try to go one to one from biblical stories to contemporary life, but this is part of the this is part of the tragedy. I believe without B'emunah Shlema in the justice of Zionism, and I'm very very happy. And there's some tears on the other side of the family too that it deserves to pay attention to.
Wow. So back to Rivka, and uh, she pays a huge price in the end for the subterfuge for this her devisings.
Right. So is it worth it?
You know that
She
Rebecca, this is really, I mean, Rebecca's Devorah Meineket Rivka, her death is described. Rebecca's death is not described.
this did say what you mean there.
So the Torah has some strange detail about a woman named Devorah who was the nursemaid of Rebecca, who came with her from Aram Naharaim. And at a certain point later in Genesis, she dies and they bury her in a place called Alon Bachut, the oak tree of weeping. But the Torah does not tell us the story of the death of Rebecca. And is that like a kind of accident, that it was a piece of the biblical lore that, for whatever reason fell out? Or is it something to be said that she did what she had to do? We're glad she did what she had to do. And just like Isaac and Abraham will never speak again, maybe nobody can mourn Rebecca because
Well,
she,
it could also be along those lines is that it creates a rupture between Isaac and Rivka that's never healed.
yeah, exactly.
And
Maybe,
this is
yeah.
Isaac's story, ultimately, this Parsha Toldot, not Rivka's story, even though she's the main character. And so he leaves her out.
But maybe it also creates a rupture between her and Jacob, because certainly, obviously for Esau, because his
Well,
own
you
mother
have
has
to
betrayed
amplify
him.
that because I understand the tragedy. The implication is that she'll never see Jacob again. And but that's unfortunate. It didn't create a rupture. It's just the rupture is what happened.
No, but what if
Do you think Jacob felt some remorse or some ill feeling towards his mother as a result?
that is what I am floating, okay? Because
Okay. I just want that to be clear.
Jacob does have to wrestle with his own guilt, and that's he has to confront himself and he has to confront Esau in Parshat Vayishlach. But is it possible? Maybe I'm just floating this that you know his mother had a plan. She said, "Listen, you're going to do this. It's going to ruin your relationship with your father and your brother. It's going to put enormous strain on you. It's going to send you into exile. And I really don't care," is what it
Well,
sounds
I
like.
want
Well,
so we got to read verse 45, chapter 27, because that's where she dispatches Jacob back to that family. She says, go back to the family until your brother's anger subsides, and then she says, "Vishalachti ulekachticha misham." I'm going to send for you, and I'll bring you back from there. Lama eshkal gam shnechem yom echad. Why should I lose both of you one day? And she never does send for him. And I
well, so
feel
that gives
tragic for her.
some poignance then to the scene where Yaakov and Esau bury Isaac,
Yes,
because that's the scene that she dreaded because she thought that would be the death of Jacob.
but she's not. She's nowhere. She's off the stage already. We don't know
So
what.
I wonder, Jeremy, to support your position, if perhaps what the ultimate denouement of the situation is that Jacob has an ambivalence he can never conquer, and that he attributes to his mother.
Jacob, when Abraham, when Abraham becomes Abraham, God says, you will not be called Abraham anymore. And though it does say you will no longer be called Yaakov but Yisrael, he is perpetually given two names and alternates between Yaakov and Yisrael. And and
Right,
I
because Yisrael cannot supplant the name of Yaakov.
and I wonder if I don't think this is the push-up shot, but I wonder if within there is like, a character and a personhood that is not unified, but is constantly ambivalent and wrestling with itself, as my Chazan likes to say. I used to be ambivalent, now I'm not sure. And
Well, and we
and
see that play itself out over the next several parshiot, the
All
ambivalence
right,
of it.
which is a good
But
place
one
to,
fun fact,
yeah,
so Esau gets married at 40, just like his father.
like his father. All right,
He's
we'll
the
leave it.
daddy's boy.
all right, we got to
Yeah,
stop. We got to
leave it
stop.
there. Thank you so much for watching, for listening at this repartee here on this Parsha. A lot of unanswered questions, but we hope you shared the joy of that with us. We wish everybody a beautiful Shabbat, and we'll
Shabbat
see
shalom.
you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Bye-bye. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.